All right, we're gonna go over September week 4 pre-market. We're gonna be looking at a bunch of stats to see what was moving, what were the best setups. So, quote of the day is, "I'm drunk and high at the same time, drinking champagne on the airplane." 2 Chainz. All right, kind of the purpose of this, I like to run through this to remind myself. We're kind of identifying what is bullish, what is bearish. We're gonna categorize pre-markets in certain criteria we're going to be looking for, and what this does is allows us to prepare before the market open and use kind of less brain power so we can use that for execution. So we're looking at day 1 tickers only. We're not using multi-day tickers. We're looking for stuff that's less than 10, has consistent volume for the most part, has a solid pre-market structure, and over 10% gap from closing price. We're going to be looking at a few pre-market structures, one fading into open, flat or pushing into open, or no pre-market. Here's an example of flat or pushing. This is kind of like a bullish into open kind of look. Fading into open is price action that's kind of diminishing under VWAP, and then no pre-market is just no pre-market. Price ranges that we're going to look at are under 1, between 1 and 3, and over 3. And so kind of understanding what the outcome is, we're going to look at stuff that, what factors contribute or kind of add to each other to make momentum or bearish. Momentum, we're looking, that is the bullish side of it, and faders are kind of flat price action or fading into the open. So this is an example of a momentum ticker for me. This usually breaking the pre-market high or having consistent volume here. Sometimes it's up to kind of your thought process of what is momentum. For me, it's sustained moves to the upside. If it's one spike and then down, I don't really consider that momentum. And then fading is just no real moves that you can actually add into. So with that being said, we're going to look into the price range first. So with that being said, under 1, we had 4 out of 11, which was 36%, that opened under $1. 5 out of 11 at 45%. 2 out of 11, which was 19%. So 80% of the momentum stocks that we traded that happened this week came from under $3. So for next week, we're going to be looking at anything under $3 as a stronger candidate to produce momentum. On the flip side, we have the faders. 13 out of 24 were under $1. That was 54%. 5 out of 24 were from the 1 to 3 range, 21%. 6 out of 24 were over $3, 25%. So over half of the fading stocks were penny stocks, which is to be expected. I think not the last 2 weeks, but since I've been doing this, a lot of the time we're going to get a number over 50% here. A lot of tickers in pre-market come from penny stocks, so it's to be expected. So looking at momos and faders under $1, we have 24% of tickers that pop up on the radar that are under $1 have a 24% chance of producing momentum or being a momentum ticker, where 76% of those are fading. And if we look at from 1 to 3, we have about a 50-50 split. Over 3, only 25% of those were momentum, 75% of those were fading. So looking at this, we have over $3 has kind of taken a hit. Not a whole lot that's producing momentum over 3. About half from 1 to 3. So this has been the range where we've seen the most, and it's the most active. Under 1, we still have 4 momentum tickers, so pretty much similar to 1 to 3. But the overall basket is a lot bigger, so it's just more difficult to kind of pinpoint which ones are going to produce momentum. Looking at a recap of the price range, we have 80% of Momo stocks came from under $3, so 9 out of 27, 33% of all stocks, whether that be momentum or faders, under $3 produced momentum. So that's pretty good. Most of the focus should be in this range going into Monday. With that being said, we have to still be cautious of under $1 penny stocks. You know, only 24% of the basket ran, but there was still a decent enough in there. So stocks ranging from 1 to 3 had a 50-50 chance of having momentum. I should have this green. This is pretty bullish. That's a high number, but you know. And then stocks over 3 had a higher chance of becoming a fader. So this one's actually pretty bullish, really bullish, and so is this. But so now we're gonna look at the price action. So 1 out of 11 Momo stocks were fading into the open. So here are the 3 categories. You have fading into open, flat into open, or no pre-market. So 1 out of 11 stocks were fading into open. This is really good because that means that 64% were flat into the open or bullish. So this is nice because it's really easy to tell what is pushing in the open, and we can focus more of our attention on that kind of stuff. No pre-market sucks. We need like a scanner pretty much to identify those, and by the time I can look at that, draw out trend lines, draw out gap levels, all those things, the patterns have usually already come and gone. So those are tougher to play. I don't really pay too much attention to those, but still want to mark them down. And again, over half of the Momo stocks were flat pushing into pre-market. On the flip side, again, we have fader 17 out of 24 were fading into open. Huge number. When we do our comparisons later, we'll see that's a great. This is good because it's just easy to, okay, we see something fading into the pre-market. That means it's most likely not going to do anything. So we can kind of cross it off of our list of watchers. 7 out of 24 faders were flat into open. And then obviously we're not having no pre-markets for this one. So most stocks were failing or fading into open. So comparing the two, only 1 out of 18 momentum stocks were fading into open. Again, super easy to tell. I'm glad we have that number. And then flat into open, 50-50 chances. So as far as pre-markets go, it was a pretty predictable session this week for what is going to run and what isn't. We want to see that. Predictability is always good. Again, stocks fading in pre-market had a 94% chance of being bust. That's a huge percentage. Stocks flat and open at 50-50 chance of being bullish. And again, when you combine all this with patterns and what we're seeing in open market, it becomes super easy to tell which ones can produce, which ones can't produce. All right, and then looking at and putting it all together, we want to, from top to bottom, we have bullish and bearish. I don't know where my mouse is. There it is. So at the top of the list for price range, stocks from 1 to 3 are top. Stocks under $1 are close behind. It's just that most of the stocks under $1 failed, but there was just such a big basket of them. Stocks over 3, bearish. And then flat pushing and open and super bullish. Fading into an open, super bearish. So in this case, we want to see for next week on Monday, if we see a stock that is $2 that has kind of a pre-market, kind of fading and then popping back up and pushing into open, this being 930, this will be a super strong stock. On the other side, if we have something, let's say $7 that spikes and is just fading down, here's pre-market, something like this, where we have fading into open over 3, it's going to be probably a no-go. And it'll be easy to steer clear of this. Until we see something switch or whatever, which it can, we're going to stay away from something like that. So we're going to move into the tickers I analyzed, just a brief kind of go through each one and kind of look at and decide what is what. Day one faders. So again, here's a fading stock. This is the example I just drew. $7 into $5, and then it just did nothing. Yes, there could be some plays, like here's a little flag, but overall it's bearish. Here's another one. This one just had no low volume. That was also fading. This is fading into open, fading. We did have this push, but I'm not considering this bullish. To me, it's got to come. This is more of a spike in the VWAP, and then it just faded off. That's another one. This one to me is flat. It is kind of fading, but it's kind of holding this line. This one's fading. This one to me is borderline. I would call it flat just because we opened down here and we are up here. This one's fading. This one's pushing. So this is a good example of one that's pushing MSS that we're like, okay, this is a super bullish one, and then it just faded. So sometimes it happens. It's all predictability or probability. Fading, fading. This one's pushing, fading, fading. Low volume, fading, low volume, fading. This one's pushing, fading, pushing. KTTA, another example. And plus with the ones that are $7 and above, there was super whippy. Really not good. This one was fading. Flat, fading, pushing, another Onco, fading. I think that was Thursday. No, it was Friday. It was yesterday. Fading. So we're going to look at momentum here. So again, a lot of the times we have this push, this bowl shape. Another example, we're all pushing. This is an example of kind of one that's fading with low volume. It did have a nice little flag here. It didn't really do much, but to me, having some kind of flag and then pushing was momentum. Another example, pushing. This one to me has no pre-market. There's no structure. It's basically flat from open to close here, or from close to open, I should say. It's pretty much flat. No pre-market. This one's flat, but it's not a whole lot of volume. I was surprised that FIFI went, but this is also kind of a cult stock, so expected. TNXP, nice push. No pre-market on UXIN. And we're going to quickly look at multi-day runners. I think most of these were bearish. So this is the day 2 SGN. This did nothing. NVVE, a lot of the times when we go over pattern recognition, we'll have this kind of tipping over price action. I call it the up down, like almost every time. Xpon did it. Benzi was the only bullish multi-day one we had, which was nice to see, but it's just hard to predict. This one's just low volume. It's just super hard. No volume. Cero pushed. Did they also kind of tip and go? MLGO did nothing. Actually, Tnon was also bullish here. I forgot about Tnon. NCNA faded off a cliff. T-Bio faded off a cliff. No volume. Duo, just kind of nothing as well. Cine is also kind of a tip, and a lot of the times we're seeing this, but